Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it Thursdays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are loaded up. And I tell you what, man, excited to talk all things Big Red today. Numbers to dial up, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find and follow us on Twitter. And can do so, Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, and can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. Some emails to get to, some thoughts here on Fordham. Have you seen much Twitter on New York City? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you can't avoid it. National news and what is happening in New York City with Ida dumping buckets and buckets and feet of rain. So the Fordham Rams are escaping New York to get to Lincoln. I know we'll hear from Scott Frost in a little bit here, his post-Thursday media session, some comments and thoughts from Frosty. So we'll get to those. We'll dive into Saturday, what Saturday is. And we've talked about this a lot over the years and over the coaching changes. And that is, there's always an opportunity after a confounding loss to have a get-well game. And it's not always worked out, right? You look back to early in Frost's tenure, the tough loss at home against Colorado. What happens? You lose to a G5 school the following week. And then 2018, you go 6 games before finally breaking through against Bethune-Cookman and then Minnesota. So, you know, that's what Saturday is a get-well game. And whenever I'm feeling crummy, I either need 2 things. 1, some of Mom's homemade chicken noodle, or 2, a run to my favorite Chinese joint to get some hot and sour soup, right? So we'll see what flavor Saturday is for Nebraska. Confidence has got to be an issue. You can coach up, you can talk, you can work, you can correct, you can film study, you can get more physical and take out all the anger and fury during some live sessions during the week. But when push comes to shove, Buffalo is going to be a stiffer opponent in a week. And then you have the roadie to Norman and then Sparty. So it's one game at a time with a bunch of people in line waiting to take several shots to your face. So let's see what Saturday shows for Nebraska. And ultimately, it's about cleanliness, right? Do you look better coached? Do you make a jump from week 1 to week 2 with penalties, decision-making, and just flat-out execution? So we'll get into all of that. Some pro football focus stats that are very cringe-worthy but not permanent with the offensive line. In about 15 minutes, we'll dive in with Brandon Vogel from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Hour 2, it's a Barney Thursday. Gary Barnett with us. He has called a lot of ball games. He's coached a lot of ball games. We're, I believe, at the 25 or 26-year anniversary of taking the purple to Pasadena. That got kicked off with a pretty memorable upset win against Notre Dame on the road, 17-15, oh so many years ago. We'll get Coach Barnett's eye on what exactly the hell's going on with Nebraska's offense. We've been trying to answer why all week, or for several seasons. We'll try and get a why out of him. Our favorite Viking and Charger and Bill, Jeremiah Sirles, coming up at 5:25. And then Burke's Best Bets. Danny Burke will check in with us. He'll give us his take on Ohio State, Minnesota tonight. That line at 13.5. Indiana goes to Iowa City. And, of course, you have Penn State and Wisconsin. You have the numbers to get in. Elijah, what's shaking with you? Got to be feeling good. You're 24 hours away from calling football, brother.
I mean, just trying to make it through this week, trying to make it to a Nebraska game this Saturday. Definitely getting back in the rhythm of my final semester of college, getting back into that rhythm a little bit.
You've got a really good senior schedule, it sounds like.
Yeah, the senioritis isn't even affecting me because it's I have 2 classes that are actually on campus, so I just have 1 class a day that I go roll up to and go sit in there for an hour and roll back home. It's not too bad. My homework load has been pretty nice. All in all, yeah, no, I'm just looking forward to getting graduated in December.
Get graduated. So questions that were out there last week: who was going to be Nebraska's starting running back? How many carries? What was the wide receiver rotation going to look like? Did you see a different, new/better Adrian Martinez? No, and no, right? Those questions weren't fully answered with Nebraska football against a division opponent. Well, you can get some questions answered on Saturday here with just steady improvement. Let's dive into a little bit here from Scott Frost, specifically offensive line consistency, right? That C word that you all crave on the football field when you watch Nebraska. Consistency, and it's not existed. It just hasn't. At least through one game this year, through the COVID 2020, and you saw the ups and downs, the self-inflicted wounds of 2019. So it's been an accumulation here. But when we talk Saturday and we talk offensive line, that is where it starts. That is where it ends. It's always been the case with Nebraska football. It needs to be the case moving forward in a positive sense with the Big Red, as there's bigger and badder opponents on the horizon. It's got to be that offensive line that makes the difference. Are they going to be able to make a jump? We would think so on Saturday against Fordham. But again, it's more of a build-up and then a payoff, quite honestly, as this season gets more and more difficult. You can lose and learn, but you've got to learn. You've got to learn and be better. Here is Frost on what that offensive line needs to bring on Saturday.
I want to see consistency up front. When you watch the tape from Saturday, there's a bunch of plays where 4 guys got it right and 1 guy didn't, and that hurt us. So it's got to be a little more consistent. I think playing together and having everybody healthy is going to help with that. So
you had Turner Corcoran that got the majority of snaps, and you had Brant Banks go in, and we'll talk to Sirles about this here in an hour with offensive line play specifically. If you're getting thrown in there, you can get coached up all you want, but ultimately it's still different when it's live bullets, and specifically some of Illinois' edge guys. So it was tough for Banks, but I don't think that's going to be his tombstone, so to speak. I think his upside's nice. But here's the reality with Nebraska football and against Illinois. You had 23 pressures by the Illini defense. 23 pressures, 44 dropbacks. Why? Well, you were dropping back 44 times because you were down by as many as 21 points, but your patience level didn't exist. The production didn't exist with what you wanted to do in the run game, and you have that combination. It was bad, and then it got worse with just flat out what Adrian endured. Why was Adrian off? Well, Adrian was off because he was probably worried about a front 7 at his feet every throw. Why was Adrian not stepping into throw? Well, because he's probably going to get his ass kicked, and he did get hit a lot. I mean, when we talk about dropbacks, that's hit, that's hurry, that's sack. They had 5 sacks, okay? They pressured him or hit him or sacked him. I mean, that's insane. You go back 44 times, 23 pressures, 26 overall, 26 out of 44 dropbacks. He was hit, he was sacked, or he was hurried. And you know what? Illinois probably got some NFL guys, but it's not like it's Von, all due respect, but it's not Von Miller off the edge. It's not Sue, right? I mean, it's guys that everyone else in the West is going to line up and run against, okay? And you didn't or couldn't do that. You had Benhart, who I thought played the best. I mean, there was some nice work by Benhart at the right tackle spot. He allowed 4 hurries. Listen, I can't sniff what those guys are. So this is not short, fat asthma guy piling on 6'9" offensive linemen. This is just what this is what the grades were, okay? And I think they can completely get better. Corcoran, 6 hurries, allowed one quarterback hit. Piper allowed 3 sacks. I think Ethan's a hell of a ball player, but a tough day for him. Allowed 1 hit, allowed 1 hurry, so that's not good. Sichterman, 1 sack, 1 hurry, 1 hit. Banks was in for 4 plays, and I think there was 2 hurries and a hit. So that's 3 out of 4 when he was in.
As well as a holding call, I believe.
And a holding call. Now, Cam Jurgens didn't allow any pressures at all in 47 plays. So that was good. There was a kind of a BS hold on him. But you had Illinois, conversely, 5 dropbacks. They were pressured. When they dropped out of 23 dropbacks, there was 3 Husker sacks and 5 pressures. There was probably about 8 or 9 hits on the quarterbacks. So it faded as the game went on, but Illinois was pretty content to just run. I mean, you only had 15 pass attempts by Sitkowski. So there's your difference here. There's your difference with getting impatient, abandoning the game plan to try and run, and then just you hear Coach McBride talk about it all the time, being one-dimensional. Well, they're pinning their ears back and coming after you. It's bad. I hope to see against other opponents more pocket mobility options with Adrian. Okay, are you going to ask him to be a 5 to 7 step drop back quarterback in the shotgun? I don't know if that's the answer. I think giving him a quick read or 2 reads, right? Having him stand in the pocket. We saw a little bit of that last year as well. You got to be better. You got to be protecting him. It's obvious, and he'll be better as a thrower if he feels clean and comfortable and confident. And if he's getting whacked every play or every other play, that's not the answer. So the answer to me, again, amateur quarterback nerd here, move him around, lose his mobility, do some run pass option, do some waggles, get him out of the pocket, and just make it easier on him. If you're going to ask him to be your offense, which is what it turned into on Saturday, get some dudes that can take the top off, get him in the game, right? And let it be simplified. If you can throw a hitch route to Omar Manning and he can stiff arm some punk and go down the sideline for an extra 12 yards, then get him in there. Let's find out ways to get Toure more targets, or your tight end, for God's sake, Austin Allen up the seam, right? And then you've got Betts who you're just letting gather dust, and it's figure it out. Figure it out on offense with your rotation. Figure it out with your run game, and figure it out with your communication. Because I think a lot of that was a lot of the in-game inline stunts where Nebraska didn't pick up the right guy. And there were just some instances, too, where the interior, you have backups at guard, okay? You have Banda, you have Hickson. So in all due respect, if 2 of your guards that did start and played a lot of snaps gave up 4 sacks on the interior, the big dudes in the middle are supposed to take up and eat up blocks so your edge guys can go kill the quarterback. If your interior's giving up 4 of the 5 sacks, that isn't good. It's okay to go to the bullpen. And you know what? If Bando gets a longer look this weekend, great. If Hickson gets a longer look at right tackle, there's no Epinesa playing this weekend, right? I mean, and that was a tough duty. Okay, tough duty for Hickson against Iowa a couple of years ago, where Epinesa, who's playing for New England now, just fed all day. That was a tough matchup. That's gonna be a tough matchup for most guards. Okay, where they just moved Epinesa around. And,
even Brendan Hymas, who's playing for the Chargers, had some bad reps against Epinesa.
It's going to happen with a great defensive lineman like that. So that's my takeaway here. Banks allowed, again, 2 hurries, 1 hit. So your interior, not named Cam Jurgens, got to be better. Yeah,
and what I saw in that game was a lot of. It wasn't even these offensive linemen just getting beat off the ball. It wasn't
There's a few bull rushes where they got mauled.
And that's what I'm saying. It was a lot of Illinois keeping their pass rush lanes, which that's high school football stuff of maintain your pass rush
Don't
lanes.
let two get loose.
Yeah, whenever you got that mobile quarterback, just collapse the pocket on him. You don't have to worry about getting off your blocks. Just put your offensive guard right up in his grill. Put your offensive tackle right in his grill. Don't let him go anywhere, and don't give him room to step into the throw. That's what I saw. It was a lot of an offensive guard right in Adrian's grill, and he's got to throw off that back foot because he's scared about, you've seen those players, the quarterbacks even in the NFL, where on their follow through on the throw, they'll hit their offensive guard on the helmet, and they'll break their finger, they'll break their hand, and boom, you're out for the game. So I saw a lot of that, of just Illinois collapsing the pocket, not even necessarily getting off their blocks, but just planting that offensive lineman across from them right on top of Adrian Martinez and saying, here, try to make a throw with this 6'8", 300-pound dude 2 inches in front of your quarterback.
The other thing here, moving forward offensively, Adrian ended up carrying it 17 times, probably 6 to 8 designed runs. The rest were scrambles or bleep moments. I'm being chased. I need to get out of it. Let's see some more zone read. Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's see some zone read where that can help your offensive line because you've got your paper or plastic choice, right? You go to the grocery store, give me the paper, give me the plastic. Let Adrian read it with whoever's running the football, and have a dual threat running game, not just from your quarterback, but from your back, and make the defense wait a count or two there and either collapse, crash down, or have to play the outside. Let's see if you're going to have to win with your quarterback run game, because your O-line just is what it is, and they can get better. They can get better Saturday. They can get better against Buffalo. We'll see where they're at against Norman and beyond. But maybe you just got to go all in with 2 running and make zone read a reality.
I like to see quarterback draw, too.
That'd be all right. Yes, the quarterback draw. Bingo card time. Brandon Vogel's next.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Emails on the way. We say hi to the managing editor for Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com. He's an author with a national champion many times over, John Cook. Dream Like a Champion's a book you need to get, especially for rainy Thursdays. Brandon Vogel with us, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, let's talk comfort food, because that's what Fordham will be, theoretically, for Nebraska. What's your go-to comfort food, sir?
Oh, that's a good question. I do, weeknight need something quick. I do enjoy making a nice pan of enchiladas. Gets a little cooler. I would say, beef stew ranks up there. Get a particular, let's throw everything in a pot here and see what happens. So that might be 1-2 for me.
Okay, that is a great call. Beef stew is fantastic, and you're from scratch guy, so it in the old tin can, rip it off, and let's destroy the sodium numbers for the week. Okay, good work. What about soup? Chicken soup or hot and sour soup?
Probably chicken. In fact, I don't know if I've ever made hot and sour soup, but I definitely like it. I'll let others make that for me. We'll take that track.
Good answer. So, okay, let's spend a second on last Saturday. How did Junior take it?
Better than most people who are watching Nebraska, I guess. There's some benefits to being 4 months old. He was easily distracted. The rest of us, I think, had a lot of things we couldn't unsee, which, isn't with the way Nebraska has been recently, and this goes back, multiple coaching staffs. It's sort of been the story for the Huskers, and here it is again, which is hard to see right out of the gate. You spend all offseason thinking, well, if this can be different and that can be different, and not a whole lot looked different, but it definitely was surprising.
If the little guy can take anything away from Saturday, I think it's plant your heels at the 10 on a punt and don't move back.
Yeah, that was a nice teachable moment for him. I was waiting until he was 5 months old to tell him to put your heels on the 10, and you don't go back, you only go forward. But it was just here's a perfect example Max, of why you don't retreat to receive a punt.
Good answer, and he, I'm sure he nodded his head and said, "Dad, you're wise. You're wise with football." So we tried to figure out why. Can you give me a why? I know there was a stat you retweeted earlier today on Twitter at Brandon Vogel when it comes to what Nebraska's actually done production-wise and why their record's the way it is. And special teams and turnovers are the killer for Nebraska. They're a killer in close games. But I want to go back to offense. Why, Vogues, why does it look like it looks like? Do you have a reason, a guess, a theory? Or is it okay to say I don't know, too?
Yeah, I think offensively, I think they have to work too hard for what they get, and they get a fair amount. You know, you mentioned that tweet, which was from Sports Source Analytics, and it's not the profile of a team that's won a third of its games. It's not the profile of a team that's won 2/3 of its games either. But they've earned more than they've gotten so far in the wins column, and offensively that starts with field position. Nebraska's average field position last week, expected points-wise, was only worth 19 points. That happens too often. It's an offense that stays on schedule pretty well, but last Saturday was kind of a tale of, gains and losses, literally, where it's like, okay, yeah, you're on schedule maybe 2/3 of the time, but when you fall off, it might be 2nd and 26. And it's just, they put themselves through so much just to get down into scoring territory. And I think that impacts, too, that when you do get there, you're not quite putting touchdowns on the board as often as you'd think for a team that gains as much yardage as Nebraska does.
That's so true. And case in point, wide open throw, end zone, airmailed, right? Or 3rd and 2, guys open for a 7-yard gain. Let's hang on for a half a count longer to try and go deep and strip sack fumble, and momentum interest compounded between the penalty that goes for a touchdown and then the scoop and score that goes for a touchdown, and bang, that's part of the Illini party that scores 28 unanswered.
Yeah, I mean those are great examples. So the missed touchdown, you get a field goal out of that. That's 4 points off the board. Technically, turnovers were even in this game, but the one that Illinois got led directly to 7. I mean, you can look at a turnover every time as about 5 points. That's about what it averages out as. So you lose the turnover battle by 2 in a game. And that's you probably cost yourself 10 points, between what you lost in the drive ending and what the opponent gained on average. And I mean, that's one. Looking at those, 3 years plus 1 game number, like the turnovers are a big piece of it. And I don't know what you do about that beyond trying to be a little bit more cautious. I mean, they're just going to happen at certain points, but the special teams part of it, the kind of hidden yardage, quote unquote, that's something you should be able to fix just by kind of recognizing that it's a problem.
Brandon Vogel's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, when you're looking at this argument, Derek Peterson had a great story, and I know you're into numbers. This story was heavy on the numbers, where he discussed how many yards per play Nebraska was getting on offense. And when Nebraska wins the yards per play battle against their opponent, they're 9-11. And when you compare that to an average college football team, the rest of the country wins at an 80% clip whenever they win the yards per play battle. It's one of those oddities that it's hard to explain, but can you explain it aside from turnovers and shooting yourself in the foot? I mean, it just seems like Nebraska's one of the best teams in the country at doing that.
Yeah, and there's, Derek did a good job of identifying yards per play, but there's like 5 or 6 of those all over the place where you're like, you expect the average team to win X amount and Nebraska's at Y. I mean, I think it does go back a little bit, particularly with yards. When you're starting every drive with 6 yards more to go than your opponent has to, like it starts to add up pretty quickly. And and that's one where so your field position is tough at the beginning. You do that over 33 games that we've seen with this staff now, and yeah, you can out-yard your opponent. And if you get some more big plays, which, Nebraska, I still don't think is at where it wants to be, though it wasn't bad against Illinois. But you're doing that in a conference that isn't as big play as, say, the AAC. That kind of adds up, too. So fewer plays, you got more yards to go. It's a little bit of a recipe for, you got to have a high yards per play just to even be in a lot of those games.
You hit for 43, you hit for 33, you hit for 75. I mean, those are three explosive plays. Now, your non-quarterback long run of the day was 11. I think they just panicked with the run game commitment. That said, the O-line had a bad day. Bogues, are you concerned about the offensive line, or do you look for them to not quite 180, but at least make ample improvement here by Oklahoma?
Yeah, definitely not 180. It may look like a 180 this week, but yeah, I do. Saturday was concerning on that front. I thought this was a pretty high ceiling group. Still could be. It is after all just one game, but with the way that they struggled, and to some degree, how often they had the opportunity to run block, well, not even to some degree, to most degree, is not up to them. So there's that piece of it, but they just never really kind of got on the same page and adjusted to a lot of the stunts and twists that Illinois was doing in the pass rush, and it looked rough.
It looked really rough. Does it sound rough based on what you've heard this week coming out of camp between same page with the offense? I mean, I thought Lubick was pretty straightforward, and it was a little different than Monday from Coach Frost.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it was just surprising to me as we've all kind of digested that game. And, in some cases gone back and watched it again, of how easily Nebraska got pushed off of that run game. So, okay, the front's different. Like, we understand that's like, it's a real thing. It's out there to whatever degree. That doesn't mean, if you've, really honed your execution and you like your talent on the offensive line in the backfield, that you can't find a way to do it, of course. So that was the surprising bit. And I do think this is an offense that wants to run the football. I think that's their potential identity. I think it's their best potential to have a strong identity. But on Saturday, they got away from it quick, which seemed like kind of the grave error, at least in my view.
Brandon, you mentioned the fact that considering the opponent, you think the offense is going to look a little bit better this week. Do you think there's any winning margin or winning score that will leave Husker fans going, you know what, maybe last week was an overreaction, maybe things are all right this season?
Probably not this week. It's one of those where if you're impressive, that's kind of the expectation. So, you could win by 4 or 5 touchdowns and it will just be like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. It's the tough part with games like this. There's not a ton I think Nebraska can show, not a ton of upside on that front. But given, how this program has struggled in the recent past with consistency and just doing that, at least seeing that would be a little bit of a soothing feeling going into, a regular G5 opponent the following week.
Bogues, 20 seconds. You got the boat rowers or the Buckeyes tonight? I know it's, you want both to lose.
Yeah, I'm actually really intrigued in that game. That's one that I looked at in the offseason quite a bit. I like Minnesota to cover. I think Ohio State will end up coming out on top. Just too much talent at wide receiver.
Bogues, we'll be back at you Saturday morning with the weekend edition. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
There he is, Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine author with John Cook. Dream like a champion. We'll get to some emails, more thoughts on the Big Red. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me. Try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We'll get a little bit more into Adrian Martinez as his fourth year moves forward, and expectations in Nebraska Saturday, but expectations of number 2 moving forward. And when we chalk up last Saturday, him or them, and that's my thought, not theirs. They're all one unit together, so we'll see if they can work together and be more of a crisp offense. A reminder about our friends from Arrow Brokerage. They help power our road trip to Champaign. They'll be sending us to Norman. And Arrow Brokerage, a fully serviced real estate brokerage, and they're operated by local real estate investors. And they specialize when it comes to investment with real estate. And they've got a small and mighty team that is driven to help all sorts of clients when it comes to buying and selling, staging and investing, and much more. And be sure to stop by and find out more about Arrow Brokerage. And I tell you what, with Arrow Brokerage, you have Jenny Limbach and Marcus Schmidt, 2 realtors you can contact for information. Email with Arrow is brokerage@arrowlincoln.com. The website, arrowlincoln.com/brokerage. And when it comes to social accounts, Facebook is @ArrowLNK and Instagram is @Arrow_Lincoln. 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. An email is where we're going to head. Joe, big-time Nebraska football fan, and he is out of North Carolina. And thanks, Joe, for listening on the stream, ESPN Lincoln, or, of course, the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. And he went to Penn quite a bit, and it's Joe's thoughts here. I guess I had the misfortune to get addicted to Nebraska football in the 90s and have patiently waited for a return to the promised land all these last 20 years. Been wandering in the wilderness. It looks like we are in for another loop around the wilderness again this year. To his point here, you and Elijah were discussing why we aren't seeing any improvement. I'm going to have to say it all lies at the feet of Scott Frost. After initially being excited by the hire, I started feeling uneasy the first and second year when I noticed that he had a real tendency to make excuses and deflect blame from himself. I know sometimes he'll say that he and the coaches need to get better, but that admission is always accompanied by a reason. He's not really to blame. The first year, it was the prior staff. The second year, it was the lack of talent. The third year, it was both lack of talent and fixing the culture and COVID. Through it all, there's been a consistent refrain that they just have to fix a few small mistakes and they'll be good. After Illinois, I think it's obvious that these are not small, easily fixable mistakes. If they were, it would have already been fixed. It's Scott who relies exclusively on Martinez, who goes away from the run at the first sign of difficulty. It's Scott who keeps the best players on the sideline and plays a host of obviously inadequate receivers that are walk-ons. It's Scott who refuses to bench players when they make the same mistake over and over. I'll never stop watching the Huskers, and I will always be suckered in by the new preseason hype train. But if this season ends the way it started, I think it's obvious that Scott's not the answer. This program doesn't need a star coach or a splash hire. It needs a boring but competent head man like Indiana or Iowa. Too soon, despite your frustration, to go in the next coach direction. In my humble opinion, I think it's too soon to do that. Now, there's a body of work that can frustrate the hell out of you, totally get you, and from an accountability standpoint, point the thumb, not the finger. There has been a long and laundry list of excuses versus ownership from time to time. Now, there's been instances, too, where Scott will own up, but too many times you just don't hear. You get an answer, but it's not necessarily the right answer, and I'm wondering moving forward here how things play out. Do the staff get on the same page together? They're supposed to be, right? And I'll say this. I think when it comes to Lubick and I think it comes to Greg Austin, I think they're both peas in a pod when it comes to what they want to do. I think they want to run the football. I think they want to get downhill. I think they want to play smash mouth football, right? I think a problem is the running back rotation, and I think a problem is just flat out trust from your head coach and your play caller. And let's get into that for 2 seconds. Your joy in football has been being a very bright, right on the money offensive mind. When we go to Oregon, when we go to Central Florida, and he had some great play calls despite having to throw half the playbook out against Illinois. Okay? I mean, he had some great play calls that worked. And then when you try and go to a run game, it just wasn't there. And then you panic. What has worked, if anything, most consistently with this offense? And let's be real. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's not worked. But when there's been some success on offense, when you've scored some points, and you've had some big plays, it's been your quarterback. It's been Adrian hitting a big pass. It's been Adrian running the football. That's what's been good, aside from a few Mills runs over the years or a Zigbo. Okay. So that's what you go back to. What has worked? What can we dial in on to get some sort of success? And if you're 50-50 at best, which is what Adrian was throwing the football because of hits and sacks and hurries, or just seeing ghosts and making a bad throw, which you're allowed to do, but you can't when you're trying to get 7 instead of 3. That's it. So I just don't know if Scott's going to really, truly delegate the play calling. The word on the street was that you had more of Lubick's influence last year with the Rutgers game and the Purdue game. Those are two of your better offensive outputs. And you have Lubick earlier this week. And I'm not trying to stir up drama here. This is not joyous to say, well, the coach said one thing and then here's the assistant. And the coach said half the playbook had to get tossed. Okay, that is still stung and stuck with a lot of us for the last week. But midweek, your titled offensive coordinator, your wide receivers coach, is saying, no, there was enough to do well. It was an execution thing. Totally true. That part of that execution is also figuring out a way to coach up guys that are difference makers and getting them on the field. And that is a kid like Betts, okay? That is a kid like Omar. And that's no disrespect to the kids that have been more consistent in practice, but your job is to get the kids that haven't been as consistent in practice to be consistent enough where you feel good that they'll go make plays, know the playbook. But when it comes to flat-out ability, you can turn a simple hitch or a crossing route with a Nixon and his speed, or an Alante Brown, instead of a 7 to 12 yard gain, that bastard can be taken to the house. And there's your big play. There's your offense. There's your passing game that, hell, may open up your run game. So we'll see if everyone kumbaya'd and huddled up and you can get a sound game plan the next 2 weeks. We'll wind down hour 1 at Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hour 2, shortly. We'll check in with Gary Barnett, the former coach at Colorado, Northwestern Hall of Fame coach. We'll get his thoughts on Nebraska offense, Nebraska's quarterback play, and Barney loves to pick. A lot of football to talk this weekend. Former Husker standout and longtime NFLer Jeremiah Sirles in hour 2. And Danny Burke, Pride of Chicago, Burke's Best Bets. A reminder about buckling up. There's over 1,500 crashes each year in Nebraska involving an impaired driver, driving drunk, buzzed, or high, never acceptable. Law enforcement officers are working every day to stop it before more people are killed or injured. If you're going to drive, don't drink. If you do drink, designate a sober driver or get a ride share. A DUI costs more than you think. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We're not far away from the NFL. Elijah, how are your donks going to be this year? Don't ask me.
I think the talent that the Broncos have, especially defensively, is enough to get not to beat the Chiefs by any means in the AFC West, but it's enough to
catch Vegas.
It's enough to get them a wild card spot, and I think the decision to start Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback makes a lot of sense when you look at what Denver has on defense. A chance to be the best secondary when you look at the pass rush they have with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, and the guys they have in the back end. Now adding Patrick Surtain through the draft, I think that defense has a chance to be one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. And I think it makes a lot of sense to give a guy like Bridgewater the chance or the nod to start at quarterback, just because he's been around, he's an experienced guy, he can lead that offense. I think that offense just needs to put up somewhere in the 24 to 28 point range per game, and I think you should be doing enough. If you can put up 24 to 28 points every single game, that should be enough to get you to, I would say 9-7, but I guess I should say 9-8 now with that extra game, which should be enough to at least be in the wild card hunt. That's what I'm expecting from Denver this season. Injuries are always fickle. You never know what's going to happen with those. But I think this Denver team finally has enough talent and a quarterback that could lead them to a wild card berth.
Well, and running game, O-line, your defense is money, but Teddy's a good thrower.
And I mean, look at the options he's got to throw it to. And look at Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler is a poor man's Tyreek Hill when you look at how he can take the top off a defense. I'm not calling him Tyreek Hill by any means, but poor man's. Where I think they have the weapons to compete and win some games. Just a question of is Teddy Bridgewater good enough? He wasn't good enough in Carolina despite good weapons around him. So the question is can he step his game up with the weapons around him?
Well, let's look at the quarterbacks in the division, right? You got Herbie, that you're looking for an encore from him. Carr in Vegas. You got Mahomes. And then there's Teddy.
Oh, you have probably the worst starting quarterback in the division. It's between him and Derek Carr.
Yeah, it is.
Derek Carr is very hit or miss. Justin Herbert, Mina Kimes had a great write-up on ESPN.com today about Justin Herbert and the type of guy he is. Made me a fan instantly reading that.
Well, the old grocery card trick. Right? It's pretty good. This out of the Big 12, expansion being considered per sources. Top candidates to join the Big 12. BYU, don't play on Sunday. Central Florida, Cincy, Houston. That'd be all right.
All those teams are teams I think that have floated around. They make sense.
You had a chance 5 years ago to add them. Coulda. You were too big. And I'm sure there was some objection about Houston from your friends in Baylor and at TCU. Now it's about survival. So come on down, Dana Holgerson. Come on down, Luke Fickell. Come on down, Gus. Gary Barnett next on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to an hour two. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And we welcome in the Hall of Fame coach at Colorado and Northwestern. We say hi to Gary Barnett. Coach, how'd you hit him today?
I hit too many of them today, Chris. So, I lost $10. That's a bad day for me.
Man. Well, there's always tomorrow, right? Before Northern Colorado?
There is tomorrow.
Well, this day in 1995, Northwestern goes into South Bend. The Irish favored by 28. I remember watching this. After the Nebraska game. And Northwestern put it to the Irish 17-15. Your message to the kids, don't carry me off. Let's reflect for a moment.
Okay. Well, it was... We played them 3 years in a row. Opening game now, and frankly, I like doing that, Chris, because your team, when you talk about how ready you got to be in spring football, I mean they're getting ready to play Notre Dame on national television, next fall, first game. So you had their attention in the spring, you had their attention in preseason camp. And we had a group of guys that were really hungry, and so we laid out a plan as to how we were going to do it, and we did it one day at a time, and we just focused on one day. And the players bought into it. And so before we went out before we left the locker room to go on the field, I just wanted them to know how much I believed in them, and that our coaches believed in them, and that we were going to do this thing. And when we did, I didn't want them acting goofy on the sidelines or on the field or carrying me off or some stuff like that. I said, let's just act like we've been there before. That's all I want. And so that's just pretty much what happened. And of course, when we got back in the locker room, we were goofy, but we weren't goofy on the field. And it was just a magic moment for Northwestern, for all those players, and for our coaches. And so it, you never get tired of thinking about it and talking about it.
Do you remember the pregame handshake and postgame handshake with Coach Lou?
I sure do.
What was that
sure.
like?
Well, it was very gracious, both. Lou was gracious. Now, he had committed a couple errors that we took advantage of by some misspoken words that he used, and he couldn't remember my name, even though we'd played him 3 years in a row and about to play in fourth year. He could not. He called me Leon Burnett, and then and all that stuff just you just put it away in the old mind, and you bring it out when you need to bring it out. And so, but he was very gracious before and very gracious afterwards.
How do you get Leon out of Gary?
No, I don't know. Well, Leon had been the coach at Purdue, and it was the Barnett deal, I think, is what it was. So
okay.
Now, Coach, you proved that day that you can still win when you're a 28-point underdog, but how about a 40.5-point underdog? That's just impossible, right?
Well, it's not likely, that's for sure. There's nobody betting on you. But if they do, they're going to make a lot of money if you win. But, a 40-point underdog, that's tough. But, shoot, we've all seen things like this happen. And
don't say that.
Well, we have. And you know what happens if you don't respect your opponent, then you get a sloppy, messy game. And you might still win, but the expectations of everybody in that stadium is that you're going to win by 40 and 40 or more. And so when you don't, then, you just got, first of all, a lot of people bet these days. Mm-hmm. And Coach McCartney taught me a long time ago, he said, most of these people aren't mad that we lost. They're not mad. They're mad because they lost money, because we covered or we didn't cover or whatever. And so, it's pretty much true, but the expectation level is so high for 40-point victory, and when it doesn't happen, and what are the chances of really doing it by 40 points? Who knows? We'll find out. But and so more than likely, there's going to be some unhappy people if that doesn't happen, and that's just the way the game is.
I'd take scoring 40 versus covering 40.
There you go. That's the way to go about it.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, let's talk Nebraska, Illinois. What did you see? And we've been trying to figure out why. Why is it still like this for Nebraska? I mean, it's miscues, missteps. Adrian was a mess. Adrian was beaten on all game. There was no commitment to the run game because you couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. I mean, what's your diagnosis from your experience? What did you see Saturday?
Well, the fumble at the end of the first half was an absolute killer. Mm-hmm. I thought, in fact, I was watching it and talking to somebody else who was watching it at the same time. In fact, it was Bob Church's, the Nebraska quarterback, and I just said, they're a better team right now. They're playing well enough to win this game. And then I bet it wasn't 2 seconds later that the fumble occurred. And to me, that just created a downward spiral that they couldn't get out of. And then they opened up with a with an 8.5-minute drive, and here you're eager to get back out there, and that team holds on the ball for 8.5 and scores. You've got to have a really strong-minded team to come back from that. And it was a perfect storm, in my opinion, Chris. All the things that were happening, you hoped and figured, and I'm sure Coach Frost said many times that this is not going to affect our team, and I don't expect it to. We don't think it will. Well, you know what? You never know. Mm-hmm. You just never know. And so that was part of it. The atmosphere, the heat, that's distracting. You go into the atmosphere, and all the vibes are with the new coach and a guy who's been there, done that on a big field and a big stage, and has done just about everything. So, and you got a very, very experienced football team on the other side as well. So, all those things are working against you. And then if you don't play well, if you have some miscues, then those things just feel like they're magnified. And the defensive, the four-man front. And I've heard a lot of talk on this. I've heard talk radio guys going, "What do you mean? You always prepare for an even front and an odd front?" Well, yes, you do. There's no question. Especially most nickel defenses are an even front, and you're always prepared for that. But sometimes they can play that defense a lot different than other people. And just an example, Colorado. So we've gone from a 3-4 to a 4-3, but we've gone to a really hard, penetrating defensive end system that causes you to change a few of your blocking schemes. And if you're not prepared for it, it's hard to get to it right away. I remember one night I was doing the Ohio State Virginia Tech game, and Virginia Tech came out in a 5-man front. That's what is now called the Bear package. Mm-hmm. And all the years of coaching football against it, we always had a plan against it, but that plan consisted of only about 4 plays. And, you had to recognize it, and you had to get to it, and you had to be willing to get to it. And it's hard to throw out a bunch of stuff you've planned and feel like you're forced to run in the same plays over and over and over. But that defense forces it. So some of that could have been happening as well as I read into all that. But I'll guarantee you, if Scott knew what it was, he'd be fixing it. And so he's pulling his hair out as well as all the fans are.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, it just feels like a bit of a disconnect on offense where Coach talked about having to toss half the play calling. You have the coordinator, Lubick, and you've got the rest of the offense saying, no, we prepped, but it just didn't seem like anyone was on the same page. You just kind of laid out the reality of being a coach and trying to adjust to something you're not used to or you have to adjust to. But overall, it just seems also, what was your kind of rule of thumb when it came to trying to settle on a running back rotation, and also some guys that are just phenomenal athletes that you want to see more from in practice, getting on the field, being part of the rotation, getting more playing time, because they're better than some of the options, physically more gifted than you have out there. How did you walk that line? Both of those items have been topics of discussion this week.
Well, I think that if you've got someone that isn't producing, and there's a reason that he's out there in the first place. He's either been, you could count on him more. He's been, he's been good about everything he does, but maybe doesn't have that spectacular play-making ability. And then you've got a spectacular play-making ability guy who probably hasn't done everything right. He's not detailed in practice. He doesn't maybe block as well as someone else does. And so you know what you do? You let the guy. There's a point in time when the guy who does everything right but make the big play, you got to give the other kid a chance. Now there has to be enough time to where everybody on the team feels like it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
when you just start throwing guys out there that haven't perhaps done the right things, haven't followed all the rules, et cetera, and are not consistent, and maybe aren't detailed as the other guy that's out in front of him, that can hurt your team as well. But there does come a time when you have got to make plays, and that's what offense is about. It's making plays, and defense in the secondary making plays, and you got to have playmakers out there. And so there comes a time when you just have to make those changes. Whether you do it after this particular scenario, I'm not sure. I think that's just one of those things that the coaching staff has to decide.
When it comes to just miscues, and you see, and that's plagued Nebraska. It's been turnovers and penalties and miscues and special teams. Is that just taking it from Monday through Thursday? If it's physically and mentally gotten better, but you got to make it a Saturday deal? I mean, why are the mistakes still mistakes?
You know what, Chris? There are guys that are just mistake guys.
Okay.
And, you don't like to label anybody that way, especially one of your players. But when it happens game in and game out, day in and day out, then you can't play the mistake guy. And you've got to get him off the field. And you got to get somebody else out there. I mean, the mistakes are worse than the lack of ability the guy behind him may have. It's the mistakes that kill you. And so the whole game's about eliminating mistakes. And you can't play a mistake guy. And you look at Adrian right now, and you have to wonder if he's a mistake guy, because it's never gone away.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, going to do some rapid fire as we got a full slate of college football this weekend. What do you think tonight? Ohio State, Minnesota, minus 13.5.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, I like Minnesota, and we play them in 2 weeks, and I've looked at them already, but I think Ohio State has just got too much, and even though it's in Minnesota, so I like the 13.5.
Okay, so you like the Buckeyes. Yep. Penn State at Wisconsin, the Badgers minus 5.5. Penn State lost a lot. We'll see if Wisconsin can bounce back for another solid season. What do you think here?
Well, every article I read and every publication I see thinks that Wisconsin's a possible playoff team. I don't know about that, but I like Wisconsin to cover 4.5.
Okay. Iowa hosting Indiana minus 3 Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm going to go with Indiana on that. I just think that there's the transfers that they got to Indiana. They got into Indiana. A whole mess of people transferred that are good players, and both of those coaches are excellent football coaches. You hate to see either one of them lose, but I think Indiana may be the team.
You've seen Iowa though at home. They've stung some good teams at Kinnick. How tough a place is Kinnick to play?
It's very tough. There's 3 places in the Big Ten that Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State. They're just really difficult now. So it's a tough place, and those folks get after it. They've got a great tradition there. So
Clemson, Georgia.
Yeah, 3 points I think is the spread, and I think Clemson wins this game, but I think it's a low-scoring game.
LSU at UCLA minus 2.5.
I don't know if UCLA's for real or not. I watched them, and you don't know if you can trust LSU coming back from last year, but I think LSU probably by 3 is about right.
Bama covered the 19.5 against the U.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, moving on.
That didn't take well. That didn't take long.
Don't bet against Bama.
Last thought. Notre Dame at Florida State minus 7.
Yeah, I take Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's just a better football team
Coach,
right now.
Have a great call tomorrow night. Enjoy back to football, all right?
Oh, I'm going to, Chris. I cannot wait, and good luck with your 40-point spread on Saturday.
We'll see if Mama will loan me some. Coach, take care.
Talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
I love Sirles sightings. Jeremiah Sirles with this standout Husker. our favorite Buffalo Bill Viking Charger at Sirles71_HSKR on Twitter. Sirles, you going to be a little bit cooler this weekend? How are you?
No, I'm doing good, man. Yeah, looking at the forecast, it doesn't look like it's going to melt me to the turf like it did in Champaign.
How was the Champaign room, man? You were roaming the sideline. I know it was 1 billion degrees. Beer couldn't take that pain away on Saturday for a lot of Nebraska fans. But first and foremost, how was it, man? How was the sideline?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed myself. I really enjoyed being able to be down on the field again for a football game and be at that level and just being able to see things from eye level that you can't really see from the fan side of just the way guys are coming in off the field, the flow of the game, like the real tempo of the game being down there. It was just really a lot of fun to be back and be a part of, and it's something I'm really looking forward to the rest of the year as well.
Well, let's talk about the flow on offense, and you've been in some
flow.
Well, right. Why? Okay, then why? Why no flow, man? What did you see with those eyes that have done the offensive line for a while?
You know, the biggest thing I saw was our inability to stay on blocks at times really came to haunt us. And, I mean, the first play of the game, Schmitty, if I'm being honest, we should have scored. I mean, really, if Banks and Piper can seal up their double team up to the linebacker, I mean, Gabe Urban's first handoff as a Husker might go for 80 and a touchdown because it'd be one-on-one with him in the backside safety. And that was kind of the tail of the tape throughout the whole game. Is there's always one or two guys or just one guy not being able to finish his block or not being in the right spot. And is to have an effective running game, you have to have all 11 guys on the same page. And I think that Frost and company really want to have a physical running game. And I think that we will have a physical running game, but we just got to clean up the one guy here or there. And don't get me wrong, everyone took their turn, including Adrian, including Austin Allen, everyone took their turn in not being the one that finishes the block to spring the touchdown. And I think that that's something we'll watch the tape on and understand the hidden yards that we had left out there on offense, because there was a lot of them.
Are you concerned about the running back rotation at all? Or do you feel like that can maybe continue to shake itself out after Saturday?
I still think it's anyone's position to take. I thought that maybe we might see a guy on Saturday separate himself from the field, but the big surprise for me was we didn't even see Sevion Morrison. I mean, when the third back came in, obviously Gabe Urban got the start. You saw Marquis Stepp came in, got the first touchdown, and he kind of had some momentum rolling. Then he kind of just disappeared in the second half. I know he missed a blitz pickup, which if you're a running back, that's a big thing because Austin Allen was wide open when he missed the corner blitz. But you kind of saw Ramir Johnson came in. He didn't have a ton of yards, but he provided a little bit of spark. And so, I mean, the job is still anyone's to take. It's now the question of who's going to step up and actually take it and be the top dog in that room, because right now I really don't think there is one.
Let's go to the offensive line. You mentioned guys took turns, and you've been there. You've made a first start. I think it was against Von Miller. And it is what it is there. And you had a good night. And it was a tough night, but let's go to Banks. Let's go to Hymas making his second start. Let's go to the interior that I think 4 of the 5 sacks came from or against both of Nebraska's guards. I know Benhart had a good day when you look at the 5, same with Juergens for the most part. But overall, what's left for this offensive line, I guess, concerns and then upside. Let's go there.
Yeah, so I think I touched a little bit on the run game portion of it. The one thing that I didn't see from this offensive line that was a little disheartening was I want this offensive line to be able to make the coach right. So Scott coming out and saying that, like, the game plan was a little out the window and stuff, okay, I can understand that. But there comes a point when all 5 guys need to stand up and say, I don't care what the coach called. I don't care what defense they're in. We're just going to physically push them off the ball for 2-3 yards and let the running back make something happen. And I just didn't see that from them consistently on Saturday. There was times, but I want to consistently see them say, I don't care if it's odd, even, black, green, polka dot, upside down. We're just going to physically beat you up front, and we're going to run the football. And so we need to get to that aspect. Now, switching gears to the pass protection thing, we opened Pandora's box a little early in the season in that we struggled with the twist game. They ran a 4-down front. They mugged the Mike linebacker, who was really good for them, Jake Hansen, right over the center, and they ran a bunch of twist games, and that's why you saw a lot of Martinez pressure and sacks came up the middle, because it would be two guys pin, one guy comes around, one guy pins, one guy comes around, or Jake Hansen would start on the right side, and then they'd have the D lineman pick the center, and the linebacker would squeeze to the opposite B gap, and we just didn't pass them off. We always found ourselves either on different levels, or we were getting ourselves picked, and that's something that's now on tape. The tape never lies. The tape tells all. And so teams are going to mimic that until we can get it stopped. And so it's only going to take one or two times of us picking it up and smashing the twister in the mouth and cleaning his clock. But until then, we're going to see twist games, especially as we get into Big Ten play. And I'll tell you this, Oklahoma twists a lot too.
Sirles, through fall camp, I think we've heard a lot about how good and like the upside of this offensive line. Do you think the struggles Saturday were a result of a lack of experience? Was it just not having your head in the game? Where do you think those troubles came from?
I think it's a bit of growing pains. I think that people thought when you hear, man, we got a lot of upside for this offensive line, means that they're already there. Upside means that there's a lot of room for growth, but we got to grow through the growing pains. I mean, you look at it, we put two guys in the NFL that made 53-man rosters and got drafted in Farniak and Hymas. That's hard to replace, especially when you're talking about young guys. I mean, Turner Corcoran had a very small sample size against Rutgers last year, and he looked good. He struggled at times. And then you got Ethan Piper, you got Mitch Schichterman, who, Piper got some playing time last year, but he was kind of rotating in and out, wasn't really the guy, kind of the guy. Now he's the guy. He's expected to play 60, 70 plays a game. I think that with young players come young growing pains, but like we said, the upside for potential is enormous, but now they just have to grow through those and fix the mistakes that they made. And now the biggest thing to look for, Schmitty and Elijah, is to stop the repeat errors. If it happened last week, it cannot happen again the next week.
Sirles, you hit on repeat errors, and there were a lot of repeat errors. Crushing penalty, big-time turnover, special teams blow up. And why does that keep happening? You have an answer? You have a theory?
I don't have a theory. My one take on it this year is the way that I'm looking at it is, as far as for fans and for us as media to look at it, it's really easy for us to say, oh boy, here we go again, right? We just press pause on the 2020 season and we just press play on the 2021 season, and it looks exactly the same. I'm willing for the next couple of weeks to be able to put a fresh set of eyes on this season and say, hey, this is a new team. This have new leadership. There's new players in key positions. I'm willing to give this team the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be able to fix these errors. And this was a true first game jitter errors type game, even though they looked like last year. But they'll be able to fix it and move forward for it. Until this team shows me that they cannot do that, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can. And I think that that's the way that we have to go forward, and that's the mindset they have to go forward, because it's really easy for them to also fall into the trap of, oh, boy, here we go again. It's week one. We got 11 weeks of football left. Clean the errors up, get tuned up here through the next two games, walk into Norman and play a clean football game, and don't shoot yourself in the foot, and who knows what could happen.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio at Sirles71_HSKR on Twitter. You hear him and see him with the Husker Sideline Reports with the network. Sirles, last thought here with Adrian and some of his misses, his workload, and the fact on 44 dropbacks, 26 times he was either hit, hurried, or sacked. What's a normal number?
You want that to be single digits.
Okay.
If you have a quarterback that drops back 50 times, you want him to be obviously sacked 0, but you want him to not get hit more than 10 times. I mean, pressures are going to happen. You're going to get out schemed. You're going to get hold of the ball. But the fact that he was pressured on almost 50% of his snaps really, really puts a hard time for me to look at him and be like, oh, Adrian didn't play well. First throw of the game, the dude gets mollywopped. He's on his back. You can't have that happen. The quarterback needs confidence that he can stand in the pocket and deliver the ball without getting killed. And that's something that has to be an absolute 100% sense of urgency for these guys, is that Adrian has to stay clean.
How much did you guys move the pocket if there was a matchup issue or there was penetration happening either with Tommy or Taylor?
we move the pocket all the time. I think anytime you have a dual threat quarterback, if you can get, especially with how wide the hashes are in college, I mean, if you're on the far left hash and you have a right-handed quarterback, roll him out there and give him a run-pass option or pass-run option, I guess I would say. Obviously, you want to throw it first. You throw it first. But, I mean, even at worst-case scenario, the dude just continues to run to the sideline and he gets 4 or 5 yards before he runs out of bounds. I think that's going to be put more in the playbook this year, or this next upcoming week, because it is a way to get him outside the pocket, and it's a way for him to protect himself, too, instead of always feeling so trapped inside the pocket there.
A thought here on rotation. People are wondering where Omar and Betts are at. Do you think we'll see more opportunity for those guys? You got some game breakers, and I know that and I don't disagree with Lubick. They've got to earn it, but there's also there's a gap in ability theoretically with them versus some of the kids that are out there trying to get separation.
I think it's a trust issue, Chris. I think that when you're talking to Lubick and Frost say that you got to earn it, that means that they have to trust that when they put you out there, you're going to do the right things. And what I think happened is when we saw new defense and we were practicing all week, they had to rely on guys that they knew they could trust to go out there and do it against whatever they saw, man, cover one, quarters, whatever it might be, versus maybe guys that aren't quite as there or quite developed enough to be able to understand, hey, the game plan fell apart. We need to trust you that you can go run something that we ran week 2 in camp, not this week against scout team. And until you can have that full trust both ways of coach trust player, player trust coach, you're just not going to see those guys on the field, especially when it's nut cutting time and you need to make a play. You got to have guys out there that you can trust.
Is the guy going to be in the right spot? Does he know what to do? Right? I mean, simple as that.
Because if he's not in the right spot, it's catastrophe, right? You're talking turnover, you're talking sacks, you're talking bad stuff that can happen if you're not there where you're supposed to be. Miss a protection, you get your quarterback killed, right? It's all about trust all the way around.
Jeremiah Sirles, our favorite Husker, and, of course, Charger, Viking, and Buffalo Bill. And you find him with the Husker Network on the sidelines, and you follow him on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR. Jay, we'll see you on Saturday, brother. Thanks for the time. Great stuff as always.
Absolutely, guys. I'll see you Saturday. Go Big Red.
There he is, Jeremiah Sirles with us. We love Sirles. Good stuff. Great takes from the sideline. We'll get some best bets right now. Danny Burke next on Hail Varsity.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for Burke's Best Bets, Daddy's Dimes. We say hi to the pride of Chicago, VSiN Sports Network, Rush Hour, Danny Burke Show. You follow him on Twitter at DannyBurke5. Daddy, we visited your home state, and we left disappointed. Nothing in your control, my friend, but man, oh man, did you get hurt on Nebraska, Illinois last week?
Oh, man, that seems to be the pattern. You come visit Danny and then you leave hurt because he just shows you a crappy time. No, Smitty, look, that was a brutal effort all around. I mean, there's not much to say that hasn't already been said by every single Nebraska fan and just spectator in general. I threw a little bit on Nebraska to come out on top of the first half and just to be leading. And, it looks fairly solid. You had the mishap with the safety, which was just utterly absurd in itself. And then the missed extra point that I figured would come back to haunt me. But not was it only that. It was so many other things that just toppled over. And, yes, it was a terrible call, calling that interception back, and that certainly changed the momentum. But, look, you're at a point, Schmitty, in this Frost regime and in a game against a team like Illinois that play shouldn't be the reason that everything just crumbles apart, right? You should be a veteran-laden defense that's able to figure it out. You should have a good enough offense at this point to figure it out. Martinez is missing wide-open throws left and right, especially into the end zone. And I back this guy so much, and not adamantly to the point where I'm, just hoisting him up, but enough to where I thought that he deserved to be the starter over McCaffrey, that I had faith in him, kind of hopefully resorting back to what we expected he would be his freshman year. And Schmitty, I just don't think the kid has it. And I don't want to overreact too much. I don't. But look, when it's week one against an Illinois team with a new coach, new squad, you got to make those throws. It just seems like nothing is going to change.
To Adrian's defense, with his dropbacks. Our friend dropped back 44 times. He was pressured 26. So you want to talk about seeing ghosts? That didn't help. Now you got to hit those throws. Totally agree with you on that. Well, what's up with Fordham here? Is the line around 40? Can you even get a line with Nebraska?
Yeah, I think I saw it around that number, but it wasn't posted for the longest time. And last I saw, I still don't think it was up. But I'm going to be completely honest with you, Schmidt. There's no reason for me to want to lay any number as close to that with Nebraska. I don't care if they're playing my high school team. I still don't have as much confidence in Nebraska covering that number at this point. So I will respectfully stay away from that game. If anything, I would probably look to doing an in-game angle with the total, seeing how this tempo is going. And honestly, look, I'm sure there's going to be a point where Nebraska starts off slow or does something poor to where you get a lot better line. So I think this game, from a betting perspective, screams patience, get the better number.
So does the offensive play calling, my friend. Patience and run game. Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets, VSiN Sports Network, and his show Rush Hour, over 100 affiliates and on the VSiN Sports Network and iTunes, and, of course, Hurrdat Media at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. So let's dive into Saturday, and we'll get to Ohio State, Minnesota tonight in a moment. But Iowa -3 against Indiana. Indiana, man. Penix is back. Penix is healthy. They were magic last year. Tough call to go into Iowa City week 1 and try and get a win. What do you feel about this?
So this game's really fascinating to me, Schmitty, and I really like it from a betting perspective, considering you're getting Iowa at 3 in most spots. Now, if it was 3 in the hook, I'd probably opt out and stay away. And yes, Indiana getting Michael Penix back, and they say he's 100%, but this guy's had 3 season-ending injuries while being at IU, and he's an electric quarterback. I'm not doubting that, and the defense could arguably be one of the best in the Big Ten with a lot of returning starters and a good offensive line, too. However, the issue for Indiana, aside from having to play week 1 on the road at Kinnick against Iowa, is their run game. Are they going to have an improved run game? They averaged, I think, less than 4 yards per carry and only eclipsed 170 total rushing yards maybe once last season. Whereas you look at a team like Iowa, and this squad, I mean, they have Tyler Goodson, who's potentially hyped to be one of the most underrated running backs this year and could really just be an absolute beast. So we know we can rely on Iowa in the trenches and them having consistent blocking and consistent defensive success. But more importantly, again, I'm not saying I trust Petrus, but if there is a game for maybe him to thrive a little bit more so, it could be against this Indiana defense that was 10th worst in passing yards allowed per game in the Big Ten. But again, it comes down to Goodson, and I think that'll be the difference maker. And just having the home field advantage behind them, and now that the line's at 3, I think the only bet is Iowa, and that's who I'm rolling with.
Danny, when you're looking Big Ten football, you're looking at the total on that game? I know a lot of people like to bet the under.
Yeah, I think that all comes down to what Indiana's offense is going to be. If they're going to implement the run game a little bit more so, then I certainly would gravitate toward the under in that spot. But even more so, I probably would still lean in that direction. You've seen a total dip down a little bit. I'm a little bit hesitant in the sense that it's week 1 and some teams still could be working out some kinks, and we saw how sloppy the Nebraska-Illinois game was, and that's not to say that that wouldn't, give you more confidence for the under, but these offenses you could probably trust a little bit more so. So I would lean to the under, but ultimately I'm going to be staying away and just playing the spread.
Danny Burke's with us prior to Chicago. Burke's Best Bets, Danny's Dimes. Tonight, Ohio State, Minnesota. Buckeyes -13.5. They're loaded but unproven. The Row the Boat crew, returning quarterback, good receiving core, ferocity on the lines of scrimmage. Upset tonight?
I don't know about upset, but I think we see Minnesota get close to covering this game, and that's the angle I would be looking at, if anything. Now, with the spread, Schmitty, at 13.5, I would not touch it because you could get 14.5, but a lot of spots, or at least could have, prior to if the lines moved down there as of this point. What's fascinating about this game, too, is the under's actually gotten a little bit of love as well, and you would think that wouldn't be the case because Minnesota's offense, we can probably assume, is going to be reminiscent of what we saw 2 seasons ago, and their defense is nothing that you can trust, whereas Ohio State, we're expecting, of course, the high offense, but maybe this is going to be a ground game, and maybe that's how Ohio State really beats down this Minnesota defense. Stroud, of course, this is his debut, and at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to want to lay 2 touchdowns on the road in his debut against a conference opponent, against the Minnesota team that personally I think could be more of a dark horse. So you could look toward the under, although you might have missed the best number. But more importantly, if you could get 14.5, I think taking it with Minnesota would be the right angle. At 13.5, I'd probably stay away and go with in-game.
Danny, about a minute here, bud. Penn State, Wisconsin, -5.5, Camp Randall.
Man, this is going to be a fun one. And honestly, Schmidt, I feel like they set the number perfect here because I am higher on Wisconsin than I am Penn State. I took the Badgers over 9.5 with their win total. If anything, I'm laying the 5.5 with Wisconsin. Of course, it's not ideal, and, I'm beating a dead horse, but you probably at some point could get a better number with the in-game. But if I'm trusting anybody, I'm going to trust Graham Mertz over Sean Clifford. Clifford was a turnover machine last year. Yes, Mertz still has a lot to prove with those high expectations that we gained from him in those first couple of games last year, but I like Wisconsin at home in that opening game. Both defenses are going to be great, but at the end of the day, Wisconsin's offense will be the difference maker.
Danny Burke, Pride of Chicago, Burke's Best Bets. Check him out, VSiN Sports Network, Rush Hour, 6 to 7 weeknights at iHeartMedia, or can stream that on VSiN Sports Network at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, enjoy your football, enjoy your holiday weekend. We'll talk next week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Hey, you bet, Schmitty. Appreciate you having me on, and hopefully the Huskers cop it up for us this weekend.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Thursday. Don't forget, at the Single Barrel tomorrow, Road Show Friday, 4 to 6 inside the Graduate. Get yourself a big old thick steak and then go relax in your hot tub. We say hi to Deb, the spa lady, the corn dog queen. Deb, how's the fair been treating you?
Oh, it's been great. Those first couple days were pretty brutal. They were very hot. But Sunday morning arose, and it cooled off, and it's been cooler every day since, and I think we're going to have nice, cool weather through the end of the fair, which is Labor Day. So come on out to Grand Island and check out the Nebraska State Fair.
Deb, you have a truckload of product out at the fair. You have all sorts and sizes and shapes of spas. And if it's too hot, you'll just turn the temp down. If it's chilly, you'll turn it up. You've got that ability. You do. And whatever the temperature, whatever the season, you can adjust it and use each one of these different spas that we sell year-round, and especially the swim spas. They have been a huge hit, the state fair, because people are realizing that they can use those when they have to close their pool. They can keep their swim spa going because it can be used year-round, 24/7. Deb, the spa lady, is out at the State Fair. Home Innovation Spas, 20th and Highway 2 in Lincoln, off Industrial Road in Omaha. Spasonline.com. Now, Deb, did you have a corn dog in the swim spa? I did not yet. That's this weekend. I had, what was it? Deep fried cheese curds. Ooh. So fried cheese curds and maybe something to wash them down? Had a lemonade. Okay. Had a lemonade. Good answer. But I could feel the arteries clogging right there. I really could. So I'm still going to have my corn dog. You've got to have a corn dog when you go to the fair. That's this next weekend. Well, the good thing about the swim spa is you can just work it off. Yeah, I just worked it off. You're right. They're gone now. Deb, a quick thought on that fair pricing. Well, we have got great fair pricing. We say we've got the fairest prices at the fair. Well, we're out there at the fair. We're also at our stores, both here in Lincoln and in Omaha. So if you're not going to make it out there, come in and see us. We'll honor those same prices. And the great thing is we have inventory. So we have been really planning for this state fair for months and months, and that's made a big difference because the competitors don't have inventory. We do for really quick delivery. Deb, the hours folks can see you. 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, 10 to 4 on Saturday at both of our stores. We'll be at our location at the Nebraska State Fair through Labor Day. All right. Deb, we will see you soon. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Bye-bye.
There she is, Deb, the spa lady out at the State Fair, Home Innovation Spas. Quick reminder about your friends at Ferris Financial Group. Their goal is to educate, coach, and help you work towards your investment goals, and they specialize in investment strategy, but can also help with budgeting, planning, and overall strategy. People through times in transition, whether it's a new job or a job change. And when it comes to those goals and dreams for retirement, Ferris Financial Group, there for you. Anywhere in between, they can help with your goals and get that money saved, get that money to make more money for you. Marcus Schmidt's who you contact at 402-525-6824 or marcus.schmidt@lpl.com. Talk to you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity.